Welcome back to Munchausen's Proxy, where we are still trying to finish the finale review for Gotham Knights. In the meantime, I decided to do a quick video on the upcoming Blue Beetle movie about to drop from Warner Brothers and DC on August 18th, 2023. Blue what? I know. That was my thought when I heard DC was planning a Blue Beetle film for HBO Max a few years ago. It was originally meant to be released on HBO Max back when Hollywood studios all decided they had enough of Netflix making money off of their films and series and started their own streaming services. Of course, none of them seemed to understand how streaming worked financially, which is why they are all now hemorrhaging money. Well, except Sony, who was not as retarded as the others and therefore is still raking in the licensing dough. Apparently, Blue Beetle is a sort of Iron Man knockoff, minus the billions of dollars and the abandonment issues. Although the opening of the trailer tries to get you to think he is rich like Tony Stark. For about 2 seconds. DC and Warner Brothers have deviated greatly from the origin of the character and how Jaime Reyes came to bond with the scarab that makes him the superhero. Now, I am a Marvel guy. So I'm a DC normie. Most of DC outside of the movies they have released over the years is beyond me, which is why I had never heard of Blue Beetle. From what I gather, Jaime Reyes was not the original Blue Beetle, but only got the scarab when the wizard Shazam was attacked and the scarab blasted across the world from his lair. Jaime Reyes found it and it bonded with him. In the trailer, it is given to him by a severely hot woman who gives it to him so that she is not caught with it. She hides it in a fast food container and passes it off to Reyes. Later, he is looking at it with his family and it fuses to him, turning him into the Blue Beetle that looks an awful lot like Spider-Man in the Infinity Saga movies, though blue. The costume looks nothing like it did in the early Blue Beetle comics, but later comics look somewhat close to what Warner Brothers have managed. There's a very heavy Iron Man resemblance that I am sure is purely coincidental. They tried way too hard to make the scene where it bonds to him funny, failing pretty hard. Then it shows him blasting off into orbit before plummeting to Earth and stopping inches away from either a river or an ocean inlet. We then get some exposition from Hot Chick before Reyes stands in front of an oncoming bus like a moron, necessitating the suit to slice the bus in half in order to save him. This scene made me think someone in either the writing team or the effects team, or possibly the director, liked Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness a little too much and wanted to rip off the scene in that movie for this one. After a few random scenes, we see Susan Sarandon, who I guess is the big boss bad guy, telling Reyes that the scarab is hers, despite it choosing him. So I guess she sends some jackbooted thugs after him and his family to get it back. After some more frenetic scenes of randomness, we get George Lopez driving the Beetlemobile and screaming like a redneck before dispensing the wisdom. And near the end, suddenly Jaime Reyes is some kind of martial arts master, seemingly out of nowhere, as he gets the suit to create him a giant sword. Then we get the logo, before we see his sister playing with a shield and Reyes saying it is like Batman stuff. Then we get the dumbest thing in the entire trailer when George Lopez calls Batman a fascist. I'm not sure when DC is going to realize that having their other characters drag down their most popular character is bad business. They did it constantly in Gotham Knights on CW and it drove me nuts. This movie cost Warner Brothers and DC Studios $120 million to make, and probably another $50 to $60 million to market. While not the insane price tag of some of the Marvel flicks or its predecessor, The Flash, it is still a hefty chunk of change to make back. especially in the era of superhero movie fatigue. It will need to reach the neighborhood of about 350 to 400 million to break even. Going against it is a number of factors. First and foremost of these is brand damage DC has sustained over the last decade. While Marvel was pumping out hit after hit, DC has been pumping out one meh movie after another, with the lone bright spots being the Joker and Aquaman. The latter a feat that can only be explained by a shirtless Jason Momoa and an Amber Heard running around in a skin-tight bodysuit for a good chunk of the movie. The shows pumped out on CW contributed greatly to this damage, as DC became synonymous with crapfests like Batwoman, dumpster fires like Naomi, and utter train wrecks like Gotham Knights. See my review videos for details on Gotham Knights. The second thing going against Blue Beetle is the fact that normies have no idea what the hell Blue Beetle is. Hell, I was a comic guy and I had never heard of him. While it is not impossible to take a little-known comic book character and turn it into gold at the box office, it is rare and takes a good story, a talented director, and an outstanding cast. I have heard of neither the screenwriter nor the director. For all I know, they could be the next big thing in Hollywood, talented beyond belief. Unfortunately for them, I doubt it. This trailer is not screaming awesome story and fabulous directing to me. And then we have the cast. Again, most I have never heard of, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I had never heard of Gal Gadot or Chris Hemsworth or Tom Hiddleston before Marvel and DC cast them as characters in their films and rocketed them to stardom. However, Guardians of the Galaxy, the Marvel closest equivalent of taking an unknown to normies comic book character and turning it into gold, had a great cast, led by Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, and Bradley Cooper. Nobody in this trailer struck me as overly impressive in any scene shown. And finally, we have the thermonuclear bomb James Gunn detonated on DC Films at the end of January 2023. David Zaslav, the boss at Discovery who bought Warner Brothers, including DC Studios, put James Gunn and Peter Safran in charge of DC Studios with the mandate of making the studio profitable. To that end, Gunn announced the reboot of the entire film and television universe. Unfortunately for the studio, it still had a few films that were completed and scheduled for release. Shazam 2, The Flash, Blue Beetle, and Aquaman 2 were all still set to be released in theaters, and all of them cost a fair amount, with The Flash and Aquaman having massive budgets over $200 million each. Shazam flopped so hard the crater is still smoking. The Flash is competing with the recently released Indiana Jones movie for the movie that lost its studio the most money in Hollywood history, with Disney wincing as it takes the lead. And Aquaman 2 is not expected to do any better than The Flash. Blue Beetle is not likely to do any better than Shazam, since normies and fans alike have been given no reason to invest in the characters or the story, given that it will all be erased with James Gunn's new cinematic universe for DC. The trailer had a couple of good moments, but they were good because they did not look like they belonged in this movie. The scenes were far outweighed by the stupid or just plain boring scenes of the rest of it. While I am not a box office prognosticator, I would be surprised if Blue Beetle does much more than the $133.8 million worldwide that Shazam managed. Meaning, Blue Beetle would be a flop, costing a financially strapped Warner Brothers and DC somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 to $50 million in losses, at a time when they are seriously thinking about licensing some of their IPs to raise money to pay off $50 billion of debt. I will not be contributing to their debt relief fund at the box office, but I will watch with a bit of popcorn as they flounder once more in theaters. I am working on the Gotham Knights episode 13 review, but I wound up having to go out of town unexpectedly and only just got back, so my posting schedule is a little off. I managed 2 quick trailer reviews before I left and scheduled them, but Gotham Knights episode 12 review was nowhere near complete, and I only just got it posted the other day. Look for another trailer review before Gotham Knights episode 13 is done, unfortunately. Fortunately, there are some interesting projects coming despite the writers and actors not being able to read the situation in Hollywood and deciding to go on strike. That is all I have for this video. If you like the video, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to get notified of new videos. Also, please hit the like button, share the video, and comment down below. It is all appreciated and it all helps out the channel. Until next time, tschüss.